Well, hey everyone, and welcome into Pushing the Limits. Today, I am welcoming Devon Price to the show. Devon, wonderful to have you. Fabulous to get to know you, and I'm really excited for today's topic, which is ketones and exogenous ketones. So, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you.
Thanks, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Now, you have a very interesting background. You didn't start off in the health or supplement world. Give us a little bit of your, the 2 minute version of how did you get to be in the world of exogenous ketones and ketone products. So, yeah, give us the short version.
Yeah, no, I don't. My background is in science and engineering, starting with mechanical engineering, and then I moved into um, healthcare about halfway through my career, driven by, and in the U.S. that is an ongoing complex problem, high quality, cost efficient care. And about 5 years ago, I stumbled on ketones, just experimentation with intermittent fasting and ketogenic diet, and became fascinated by, really the growing amount of research that was happening in that space. My brother-in-law Peter and I were doing that sort of at the same time, and it, it out of that curiosity for around the research and the health implications of having access to this super clean, super efficient fuel, um, grew a sort of unending well of energy to build this business, Kenetik, with a mission to make ketones available for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, in in popular culture, the keto diet has grown in popularity hugely in the last few years. Everybody and every man and his dog's been doing a keto diet. I think it's the term keto has sort of got bastardized a little bit because a lot of people don't really understand what clinical ketosis is, what a clinical keto diet is, and then not everyone is also aware of exogenous ketones. Exogenous meaning that you can drink ketones and get yourself into a ketotic state without having to do the diet or in combination with the diet. And I've been fascinated with this world because I've got a mum, as everyone knows, who listens to my podcast, who's had massive, massive brain injuries, aneurysm, strokes, brain cancer, dozens of concussions, so on, hydrocephalus, everything known to man. She's a miracle that she's alive. And ketones came onto my radar. Unfortunately, not at the beginning of her journey because I wasn't aware of it 10 years ago when she had the aneurysm, and she was being fed with basically a glucose syrupy type of stuff that was being fed into her tube when she was in the coma. If I knew now what I know, knew then what I know now, I could have saved a lot of brain injury by having her on a high keto diet, which I didn't know then, but I pretty quickly worked that out. Um, what what is it about ketones, or explain first what a keto diet is, and then we'll move into what exogenous ketones are.
Yeah. So a keto diet is one that really omits sources of carbohydrates. And what that does is simulate a fasted state for your metabolism. Um, when you feed with only fats and small amount of proteins, um, your body switches into a metabolic state that we don't normally access, at least with a standard diet. And in that with that metabolism, you are breaking down fatty acids. Your liver is converting them into ketones, and your body is using those ketones as a source of fuel, particularly for your brain, but for your heart and your muscles as well.
Yep, no, that's a really good
Are
summary.
you,
And sorry, I've had to turn off the video. We've got some delays on it, and it's just not going to work with the video today, unfortunately. But we'll just keep trucking along, and you might do better actually to turn your video off too, and then we can just have the audio at a much better quality. And I'll get my editor to cut all this bit out here. But
All right,
yeah,
I'll do that.
so sorry about that, Devon. I don't know what we've got going on, but unfortunately we've got this. Yeah, it's just cutting out too much, so we'll have to do this. Okay, so editor, can you just chop all that out, and we're going to redo it from here. So ketones are, when you are in a calorie deficit or in a carb deficit, your body produces ketones. So basically, you're going to your fat stores, you're taking out the fat, it's coming to the liver and being converted into ketones. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And then these ketones are a perfect fuel source, aren't they?
They are. They are extremely, they're very clean. And what I mean by that is that they don't produce the same sort of reactive oxygen species that glucose metabolism does. And those free radicals are, they're charged and they can damage cell walls. They are very efficient. So in an early study that Richard Veach did, as he was sort of understanding ketones and their metabolism, he did a study where he fueled a heart with glucose alone and ketones alone, and found that the efficiency of glucose, basically the amount of work that the heart can perform when fueled on glucose per unit oxygen is about 10%. And when fueled with ketones, it's 25%. So essentially what that means is that with ketones, you are supercharging your cells. You're producing more ATP, which is the currency of energy, with a single ketone molecule than you are with a single glucose molecule. So cellular function is its ability to produce energy effectively. And that, of course, is at the root of, your health, your ability to really do anything. It triggers neurotransmitters, affects how you feel. It all comes down to the efficiency of your metabolism. And then, the other interesting thing is that as we age, with glucose metabolism, insulin is an important signaling hormone. It triggers the absorption of glucose into the cell. And as we age, particularly on a standard, when we're eating a standard high carb diet, we lose sensitivity to insulin over time. And the efficiency of glucose becomes lower and lower as the insulin works less and less. And so over time, that can really affect particularly a very energy hungry organ like your brain, how well it works, how well it functions, how well you think. And so over time, you ultimately are left with a brain energy gap. You're not fulfilling all of the needs of the cells in your brain and in your body. And so that becomes kind of a progressive problem without access to, in particular, an efficient fuel source like ketones. Because, the other important thing to note is that ketones bypass that pathway, that insulin-dependent pathway. They're drawn directly into the cells and can be used by the mitochondria to produce energy without it. So that's how it closes that energy gap that sort of progresses as we become more insensitive to insulin as we age.
Wow. And that just sums it up beautifully, because basically metabolic dysregulation is absolutely rife in the population. I think something like 85% of people over the age of 40 or 45 at least in the States, are metabolically dysregulated, have insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes, which is really the gateway to hell and all of the age-related diseases. So from Alzheimer's to cancers to, brain fog to, energy depletion, it's all coming down to this metabolic dysregulation. So by putting in, we can do the keto diet, and we can talk about the benefits of doing the keto diet. But I know from working with lots of people, getting into a therapeutic state of ketosis via diet alone, while great if you can, is not always easy for a number of reasons. It's a very strict diet. I mean, the clinical keto diet, that's used for things like epilepsies and seizures and that type of thing, is a 5-to-1 or a 4-to-1 sort of ratio of fats to carbs and protein, which is horrific. You're eating 90% fat, basically. So you're just eating, like, who wants to do that?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that's really tough, right?
To put that in perspective, that's about 1 banana worth of carbohydrates a day.
Yeah.
The rest is butter.
The rest is butter, and that's not great. Like, who wants that diet? And they do use that in the hospitals, right? They use that for people with severe epilepsy and seizure problems and things like this. But getting somebody, I know working with lots of older people who are on medications, they can do the keto diet till the cows come home, so to speak, and they don't get into a therapeutic level of ketosis where their, the millimoles of their ketones in their blood is really reaching a level where it's super beneficial as a therapy. I work with a lot of cancer clients, and we really struggle if they've been on chemo, or they've been on the steroids, methotrexate or things like that. Then it's virtually impossible to get them into a therapeutic state of ketosis. And then for the average person on the street, most of us haven't got the discipline to be in a full ketosis diet. Some of us have, and that's fabulous. But even people that are on a keto diet and doing really well on it, they could actually benefit from these exogenous ketones, which is what we want to really dive into today. And this is like, for the want of a better description, having your cake and eating it too. It's a really bad description, but you know what I mean. I am a big fan of taking exogenous ketones. So these are ketones. When I say exogenous, people, I just mean that you're drinking these. So it's bioidentical ketones that your body would be making, but you're taking them in a really nice tasting drink. That wasn't always the case, was it, Devon? Yeah.
No.
So tell us about the ketone research and how it used to taste like jet fuel and why it doesn't taste like that now.
Yeah, well, the first drinkable ketones were developed by DARPA in collaboration with NIH and Oxford. Richard Veitch was one of the principal investigators, and the goal, and he had, he was instrumental in kind of uncovering the role of ketones in metabolism and in health. And the goal of that DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency,
Yep.
For the military, was to create a super fuel for soldiers, one that allowed them to perform at their peak on extended missions. And it was pretty well known, the benefits of fasting and of the ketogenic diet on your mental energy, and your cognition. But that's not practical in, like you said, in a day-to-day setting, let alone in a military setting. And so what if we could have both carbohydrates with a normal diet and also access to ketones, the super fuel? And so they developed a ketone ester, which is two ketogenic molecules combined together through an ester bond. It's a D-beta hydroxybutyric acid molecule, which is the exact same. That's the ketone body that your liver creates when it's converting fat into ketones, and then a 1,3-butanediol, which is actually a precursor to DBHB, which it's an alcohol molecule that is metabolized also into ketones when you drink it. So this ketone ester, when you drink it, those two molecules separate, and you are provided with a boost of DBHB and of 1,3-butanediol that is then metabolized into ketones as well for a more sustained boost. It turns out that they worked very well. The results of that DARPA program were positive, and but the challenge was that the ketone esters, while effective, just it tastes like nail polish remover. They're very difficult to drink. Your brain tells you as soon as you put them in your mouth to spit it out because it tastes like poison. And so while sort of a huge leap forward, these ketone esters have enabled all kinds of incredible research into the benefits of ketones, potential benefits of ketones, applications in disease states from diabetes to neurological conditions, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer. It's been pretty incredible. One study, which is really interesting, that's being done at the University of Pennsylvania right now by a researcher. Her name is Corinne Weirs. She was also from the NIH, but she is focused on recovery from alcohol and drug abuse.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating because she might be somebody you want to have on your podcast at some point to talk about her research. But essentially, when you are chronically drinking alcohol, your brain becomes accustomed to using acetate as energy, because when you metabolize alcohol, you create acetate, and that goes to your brain. It's used as a source of energy. And the hypothesis is that when you stop drinking, that you're then starving your brain of that energy source that it's used to, and that contributes to a lot of the withdrawal symptoms. But ketones, and the ketones that are in Kenetik, are very similar to acetate, and they close that brain energy gap. They provide the brain with the energy that it needs and reduces the withdrawal symptoms, making a dependence on other standard drugs and medications that people use to deal with those withdrawal symptoms much less necessary.
Wow, I knew of that. I interviewed Frank from, oh goodness, forgotten the names just dropped out of my brain, but I knew that it was used to help people get off alcohol, but I didn't understand it was the acetate. That's I didn't understand that was the mechanism by which it might be working, because this is wow.
Yeah, that's the hypothesis. That's what she's studying, and she's doing both inpatient and outpatient trials now, based on prior very, very compelling, promising research. So
wow,
yeah, it's cool. I mean,
cool.
there are benefits in it that cross a whole spectrum of illnesses and chronic conditions. And I think that what it continues to come back to, in my mind, is the efficient operation and high functioning of your metabolism, of your cell's ability to produce the energy that you need to be healthy. in so many different states.
And it's a clean fuel. So, I mean, if I go through a list of some of the things that you can experience or benefits that you can experience if you're taking exogenous ketones and your body is operating on ketones or even on the keto diet, you're not getting the crash for starters. It's not like a caffeine where you've got energy and then you crash afterwards, or like sugar where you take sugar and then you're high for 10 minutes and then you crash and you've got no energy and you have to have more sugar to keep it going. So you've got the sustained energy release. And the exogenous ketones are also very anti-inflammatory, they're antioxidants, they're neuroprotection. You get a better endurance. So for athletes who are wanting to, like Tour de France athletes are classically known to be using exogenous ketones to help them with their long endurance performance. I wish I'd had that when I was an ultramarathon runner. You've got faster recovery, you've got improved mitochondrial performance. You've also got more, I learned this one from Dr. Yerth, more resilience against infection, certain infections, which I wanted to ask you a little bit about. And you're optimizing that metabolism so that your mitochondria, which are, dysfunctional mitochondria are at the basis of all, well, most diseases, shall we say. And so by optimizing your mitochondrial function, producing more ATP, we're going to deal with a whole lot of ills of society, basically. So it's like, who should not be on exogenous ketones? Like, really? If you can and you can afford it, and they taste good, and they do so much good in the body. And when we talked before about the alcohol and the acetate, it doesn't break down like into the bad things that alcohol breaks down into, does it? So just to clarify that for people, that they don't think it's a form of alcohol that
Oh, right. No. Yeah, absolutely not. Completely different metabolic pathway there. I had mentioned that the 1,3-butane-diol is an alcohol, but it does not have the same type of uh, impairing effects by any means of ethanol.
Well, can you answer me one thing? Like, if you're taking high doses of exogenous ketones, like I've got my mum who, obviously has all these brain impairments, and she's on very high doses 3 times a day. Is there any risk of insulin being released when you take high doses? Should you take it over a longer period of time, like sipping it throughout the day, as opposed to a bolus 3 times a day? And I listened to Dom D'Agostino talk about insulin possibly being affected by taking high levels of exogenous ketones, and he's a big proponent of exogenous ketones. But what's your take on the insulin story? Does it have an effect on insulin?
Well, my knowledge of it extends to the role of insulin as a regulator of ketones in the body. So as you get to a high level of ketones, it actually helps to attenuate the amount of ketones in your bloodstream, so you don't get to that 10 millimole sort of ketoacidosis pathological state. But I would have to read up a little bit more on D'Agostino's research around that, the potential limitations of too much at once.
I'm just trying to work out whether it's best to be sipping on this throughout the day, as opposed to taking it in boluses.
Yeah. So to answer that question, I would say yes. I mean, you want to shoot for a level of a circulating level of ketones between the 1 and 3 millimole range, typically. And for instance, one Kenetik has 12 grams of ketones, and that will elevate your ketone levels to above 1, between 1 and 2 millimoles for roughly 2 to 3 hours. So, I have one in the morning. I have 3 to 4 a day, typically.
Hmm.
And that keeps my ketone levels at the right place. I don't, it's a situation of more isn't necessarily more.
Hmm.
Um, because once you do kind of get past the 4 or 5 millimole range,
No point.
your body, yeah, there's no point. You have access to the amount of ketones that your cells need and that they can use, and you end up just not using all of it that's there.
Yeah, and it
Um,
costs, so you don't want to be silly and throwing your money at the wall beyond what you actually need. Although it is so delicious that I just want to taste it all the time. Like it's just so yummy. I love it. Like I don't, like if I was to, have an alcoholic drink, I'd much prefer to have a ketone drink. It just tastes better and it's gives you that nice, relaxed, focused social feeling as well, for me personally at least.
yeah,
Gives you that like almost not like a alcohol drink in the fact that you get a buzz or you get out of it, but you get this nice relaxed social focused feeling. You have great conversations, you feel a bit more energetic, you've got the brain power to have a good conversation with people without going, oh, I'm so tired, I just want to go to bed type of feeling. So it makes you more social in that respect too. I think it's a really good replacement. Like if I'm going to a
it
party,
does.
it would be I'll be taking a ketone drink with me.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's that focused, clear feeling that, I noticed with fasting and with the ketogenic diet. And um we a couple of years ago, and this has become kind of my favorite measurement now of just ketosis and the effects of ketones, is a QEEG scan, which
Hmm.
is looks at your brain activity.
Yeah.
And what we found was that drinking a Kenetik will increase your functional brain activity in the alpha and the gamma wavelengths,
Wow.
which are, alpha is associated with focus, and gamma is associated with this like problem solving or awareness, and combined those two are, when you have alpha and gamma elevated, it's that flow state where you're in a kind of
Hmm.
relaxed, calm state of focus and
That's exactly how I
productivity.
feel. Yeah, when I take it, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I'm
yeah,
on
and you could,
fire. Like I took one before. I took some ketones before I jumped on this interview with you, so that my brain is on.
yeah,
I'm not like,
yeah,
oh. So whenever
yeah, and
you're
you,
going into an important meeting or you're you're doing something high intensity focus, it's a really good thing to take.
it is. It's such a great alternative to caffeine as well
Oh
as,
yeah,
alcohol. And I find that most of the people who find Kinetic are so excited to have an alternative to a Red Bull or a Celsius.
yeah.
Um, because in the middle of the day, I mean, like you said, we're kind of uh
Dragging our
kind
butts
of
along, going, oh yeah, when can I
yeah,
get to
and trying
bed?
to make it from peak to peak, from
Yeah.
from caffeine and sugar high to caffeine and sugar high, which messes up your sleep. And then you wake up in a trough the next day, and the cycle repeats. And so
Yep.
um yeah, kinetic ketones as a fuel source are an incredible alternative to caffeine and sugar. And I really think that there's potential to disrupt the energy drink market, because you
Amen.
know
That would be great. Like let's get this. This is why I'm doing this podcast, right? Because I want people to understand. Like, there's so many people addicted to Red Bulls and Co, and caffeine and Co, and candy bars to get them through the day. And they
yeah,
don't understand that every time you have one of those, I mean, one cup of coffee a day, that's fine, right? It's not going to be detrimental, but you're having 7, 8 cups of coffee a day, or you're having 3 or 4 cans of Red Bull a day, or anything like that, you are going to be disrupting your health. You're going to be causing, or in the Red Bull case, definitely massive sugar loads and all the other crap that they put in there as well. And you're damaging yourself. Whereas when you're taking Kenetik as a alternative, it's giving you health. It's giving you better brain. It's helping prevent, even, the studies around neurodegeneration. It's preventing or helping slow down Alzheimer's, and that's why I give it to my mum. Right, she's got it three to four times a day in order to, and it's night and day. Like after 3 to 4 hours, she starts to dwindle, right, until I give her next dose. And you might think, well, okay, then you're only helping for a few hours, but no, I'm causing epigenetic changes when I'm giving it to her regularly. I'm lowering the inflammatory load in the body. I'm helping with her immune system and faster recovery, and I'm helping the genetic changes, epigenetic changes, when I'm taking it, on a regular basis, and it's improving blood flow. And when I'm improving, boosting cerebral blood flow by, I think, 30% is the research, then
Yep.
I'm really helping the brain with essential oxygen and nutrient delivery. So it's repairing her brain, and over time, I'm, hoping to see more and more improvement instead of going down and down, which is the usual direction. And my mum is, she's unfortunately had to be a guinea pig to all of my studies over the last decade, but she is a miracle. We just had a neurosurgeon a couple of weeks ago, and he just said, I cannot believe she's alive. I cannot believe she's walking. I cannot believe she's talking. I can't believe that she's got a functional brain. Her brain has been through so much. Like, I've never seen a brain go through so much and be so functional. And that's, testament to all of the things. Shout out to Dr. Youth, our mutual friend, who's helped me with a lot of the things that I've done for her. And ketones are a part of that, as is hyperbaric, as is peptides, as are other things. But the culmination of that is, I have a mum that's alive, for starters, and functioning at a pretty good level. To, just, she's got some disabilities now for sure, but you wouldn't know it to sit with her and have a cup of coffee. It's only when she's walking that you notice, like she's got hydrocephalus, so her balance issues are the biggest issue that we can't currently get on top of. But she's a miracle, and we need to study the miracles. We need to study why are these people that are meant to have died not died? Why are these people that had cancer didn't die of cancer? I love studying the outliers, because therein lies some magic. We can work out why they didn't. And unfortunately, it's not the way the medical world works, that they don't come to you go, how did you do that? What did you do? Why is that? Why? It doesn't happen. But I can tell you that ketones are a major part of our protocol. And I'm very, very glad to have had these ketones and Kenetik, and we've got them available down here now for people who want to try it. You can come to my shop and grab them. But it's not just for people like mum who've got massive brain injuries. But it is, if you've had concussions, if you've been an athlete and had repeated concussions, this is definitely one thing that you should be doing to protect your brain going into the future, among other things. If you just want to be functioning, high performance, you're an athlete, you want better mitochondrial output, you want better endurance, you want better recovery times, this is for you. If you're someone struggling with weight gain and metabolic dysregulation, which is, as I said, 85% of the population over 40, then this is for you. Like, there isn't a person who wouldn't be benefiting from this, really. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And shout out to you for helping to, educate the world on this. The benefits of ketones were really first. I mean, the benefits of fasting goes back to, the ancient Greeks, but the discovery of ketones and the therapeutic effects of ketogenic diet and fasting goes back to about 1920s with epilepsy, as you mentioned. But then between, the 20s and even up to, the 2000s, ketones have been considered in medical textbooks to be a byproduct of pathology and something to avoid, to look out for. It's,
that's
and
they've got that.
and that,
acidosis, yeah.
Yeah, the ketoacidosis was, obviously associated with diabetes and ultra low or non-existent and non-managed insulin levels. But so too was at around in the 30s the rise of drugs that treated epilepsy, and as a result, and those are clearly much more convenient, although not as effective and have many more side effects, but became prominent. And
Mm,
you know
the drugs.
people the medical education sort of forgot about ketones and um, fasting and ketogenic diet. And it wasn't until, I think in recent years, last 10, 20 years, the work of Richard Beach, Cahill before him, that, and then now the advent of a drinkable form of ketones, that we can really start to understand them better. And if it were not for quicker, more efficient modes of communication and education, like this podcast, thank you
Yeah.
again for that.
Welcome.
It would continue, I think, to be buried. I'm just grateful that we live in a time where information is a lot more easily accessible, that you don't need to go to a a medical textbook to learn
And oh man.
about these things.
And
And
then because
because
there is so much suppression of these things. I mean, I just been speaking to someone about thyroid. Paul Robinson, who's a wonderful thyroid expert, he worked out his own problem. It took him 30 years, and he's a science and engineering background and very bright. And back then, when he started working it out, there was only the endocrinology textbooks that he had to use. And now we've
Mhm.
got access to people like him talking about his research on podcasts, but it's still not mainstream. You go to your doctor and you're still not going to get a full panel of your thyroid. You're still not going to get the intricacies of what he knows. But I can access Paul's information now via his books, via his podcast. That's an example. It just doesn't. A lot of these things just don't see the light of day until way too late, unless they're drugs, and then they see the light of day very quickly. But
Yep.
these other things, another one is plasmalogens that I've been diving deep into in Dr. Dan Goodenough's work, and he's for brain injuries and for cancer and Alzheimer's and autism and post-COVID, everything known to man, these plasmalogens are just absolutely crucial. And this research needs to get out there too, like it's, and we can now at least go out there and start talking about these amazing things and give people awareness about them. But, we're not Joe Rogan, and we're not we're not huge, but together, I think it's a grassroots movement. These podcasts, the health podcasts, longevity podcasts, the biohacking space, grassroots movements that is really moving the needle for people who are proactive and actually want to
Yeah.
learn how their bodies work. And that's key, because you have to engage with this sometimes complex stuff, but it's really worth it to have a healthy functioning body for another couple of decades longer than you would otherwise, and having quality of life. And I'm just grateful that you guys have made these formulations so that we can get them. And like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, it was basically only the Tour de France guys that could afford this, and they were getting them, and they were like $6,000 a bottle. And now we've got access to them. They still cost money, but they're doable for the average human being. And we're not having to pay $6,000 for a bottle anymore. Thank goodness, so that we can access that type of thing. And I've interviewed quite a number of luminaries in this space, and it's just, from expert bodybuilders to Dr. Dom D'Agostino through to Dr. Lat Mansour and other people in the ketone space, and it's an evolving space, and it's really, really exciting, because it just gives
Yeah.
us an option to. And I must say though, that the ketones, I've tried many different types of ketones, but your one is the one that I just love the taste of. Like, it's just like, from a taste perspective, like hands down, the very best. So shout out to you for doing that. I don't know how you managed that, because it used to taste like jet fuel. and now it's really a pleasurable experience, and not hard to get down at all.
Thank you. Yeah, we worked hard on that.
I
And
bet.
both to make something that tastes good, but then also works really well. Um, that was the trick.
Yeah, that's definitely a bit of a mission. What
My
else? Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, I was gonna say my hope is that, 3, 5 years from now, the level of awareness about ketones is widespread. I think of ketones as a macronutrient, one
Mm.
like carbohydrates or proteins or fats that you need in relatively large amounts to function, um, you know, to be healthy. And um, in 5 years from now, I think that, people will be thinking about ketones in a similar way to how they think about protein. I need to get 90 grams of protein in today.
Yeah,
I need to get 30 grams of ketones in today.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I think I think it's getting to that point. And my hope is that with, a few more years of education and bringing making it more accessible to people through products like Kenetik, that awareness will build, and
And
that hopefully will have a profound impact on people's health. You know.
yeah, on health and longevity. And I really think, like, for people going through cancer, this is also another thing to add in, because you have to go low carb. I've written a book on an audio book, which is based on the interviews with 21 of the world's experts on the metabolic approach to cancer, and going low
Hmm.
carb is non-negotiable, and ketones help the clients do that, provide the energy for their bodies to keep functioning, because your body needs ketones. It doesn't need carbs. It just needs fuel, and cancer can't really use ketones. So it's an alternative fuel source for people that are going through that. And obviously, talk to your doctor. And this is not medical advice, but it's an adjunct thing that people could put in for energy. And I think, like I think there are other things that we haven't yet discovered. Like, I would like to see research on, is it improving things like thyroid function? Is it improving, when you've had brain injuries and your pituitary and your hypothalamus are not working properly, or your hormones are out? Is there a benefit from that perspective? And the metabolic side is quite now, elucidated really. It is going to help you with metabolic, if you've got metabolic dysfunction and dysregulation, then this is going to help lower, these skyrocketing blood sugar levels that we have, and lower your HbA1c. These are things that you can track too, by the way, people. And I'd recommend, if you start taking ketones, start noticing, keep a diary. Are you no longer having the cravings? You're stopping the sugar cravings. I mean, how many people are addicted to sugar? This
Hmm.
is one way of helping yourself, because you're actually feeding the cells. When you're having cravings for sugar, it's really the body going insulin resistant and not being able to get the nutrients and the sugar into the cell, and therefore the cell's starving and yelling at you to eat something, when you've actually got high blood sugars running around damaging your body. And so ketones could be an option there. Of course, people with every sort of brain injury, every sort of neurodegenerative disease could be benefiting from this. And I've been experimenting, for one thing, like, I'm a menopausal woman, and that's a bloody fun ride, I can tell you. Um,
Hmm.
Taking just a capful at night before I go to bed, to see whether, because I'm having these wake up at 3 o'clock type of situations. I've also got a very, very, very stressful life, with my mum and her situation. So getting back to
Yeah.
sleep and things, and so blood sugar regulation in the night time, and a lot of people are waking up with adrenaline and cortisol, waking them up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I think a lot of people could relate to that, especially menopausal women. This could be, I've been finding benefit of it, just taking a little bit of ketones just before I go to bed, in order to sort of get me through that nighttime period, and not having an adrenaline and cortisol spike in the middle of the night that it disrupts my sleep. So I think there's ways we can be, testing and playing around with it, and there's probably more to come, or there's definitely more to come. But for now,
Yeah.
all of humanity could benefit already from it. And put it on your radar. Is there anything that we've sort of missed that you think we should have covered?
You mentioned, I mean, obviously the miracle case of your mom,
Yeah.
that prompts study. I just want to tell the story of Josh, who you know, his
Yeah.
daughter,
Yeah. Tell us
um,
that.
his daughter Lily, and Josh is he's on our team. He's head of program development for Kenetik, but he came to us because he found Kenetik for his daughter. She was 9 years old about a year ago, and she has a very rare condition. Essentially, she cannot use glucose for fuel at all. Um, the condition is called pyruvate dehydrogenase complex deficiency, which essentially means that yeah, she cannot metabolize pyruvate, cannot metabolize glucose as a result. And so it's a very rare condition. It's a childhood disease that, you know, doesn't, and the survival rate is very low. They don't normally live past 4. She also happens to have type 1 diabetes. That makes it
Oh gosh.
extra rare. But about a year ago, she was on, she was really sort of at the end stages. Her blood work came back indicating that she was in organ failure. She was on the 3 most potent pain medications, maximum dose, and waking up in the middle of the night screaming. Her doctors were sort of at a loss of what to do. She was on the ketogenic diet. She was on a 4-to-1 ketogenic diet. That, of course, very, very challenging for a child, as you can imagine.
Okay.
And but it was still not enough. They found Kenetik and started giving it to her 4 times a day to keep her ketone levels up. And a week later, she was home from the hospital. Her blood work came back normal. She was off her pain medications. And 6 months later, she had grown 1.5 inches. Her brain had grown 2 centimeters. She was verbal. And now she is in school and, you know,
Far out.
meeting, reaching all of these developmental milestones. And, her parents are optimistic that she's going to continue to develop like
Wow. That
a
is
normal child.
absolutely, you so you wow, that is absolutely incredible story. I can't believe that. So basically it saved a life. Um,
It
with
saved
this
it
rare
saved
disease.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And if this can, if ketones, and the reason I wanted to to tell that story is because, there are people, it's not widely known that, ketones can be helpful. Her doctors they were completely blown away,
I bet.
and they're taking notes on how Josh manages her condition and what's working and what isn't and how she's doing. And it's informing, obviously their knowledge about how to deal with this type of condition.
Wow.
And so it's not widely known. And there are other people out there who are dealing with it. And I just wanted to tell that story in case anybody who's listening
Yeah. It's
has
got a child with that. Wow.
a child with that condition, that yeah, this could be helpful.
Wow, that is absolutely mind blowing. So that alone is that alone is worth you starting this company,
Yeah,
just to help that
yeah,
little girl. And I don't know how rare that disease. Obviously, pretty rare, but and what other things? Because there are a lot of mitochondrial diseases that are inborn errors of metabolism. I wonder what else could be benefited from that. Yeah, and actually off air, I'd love to talk to you about Dr. Dane Goodnell's work if Josh has looked into that as well. but we'll
Yeah.
take that one off here. Anything else that we haven't covered? I think, so anti-inflammatory, how does it work as an anti-inflammatory?
Well, yeah, ketones, we didn't talk about that. Ketones are a hormone-like signaling metabolite. And they basically trigger our internal anti-inflammatory pathways. They block the NLRP3 inflammasome.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a
which
major one.
that's a big one. And so that is how ketones reduce inflammation, systemic inflammation. And you know, again, no clinical studies. We haven't done any clinical studies around this, but customers who are suffering with chronic pain will start drinking Kenetik and notice that their pain goes away,
Wow. So,
and stop
wow.
drinking Kenetik and their pain comes back, and start and it goes away again. And why? What is happening here? And
Mm.
it's likely the anti-inflammatory effects. We have customers with peripheral neuropathy with the same experience,
Mm.
which could be linked to, just a, the ketones effect on the functioning of nerve cells, which
Nerves. Yeah. I
also,
was just going to say
yeah,
nerve damage. So,
yeah,
you start connecting dots then, don't you?
right, right,
Like
yeah,
what other nerve sort of related things could this help? But anybody
it,
who's, like got back pains or arthritis or even, multiple sclerosis and central nervous system, I don't suppose there's any studies, but it might be worth it, trying these things.
yeah, and again, that's where I keep coming back to the the core foundation of life is energy.
Yeah.
It's movement and energy and the efficient production of energy within our cells. And you fix that, so often you fix
Yeah,
um
that's cellular health. That's just everything coming back to the cell functioning properly, the mitochondria functioning properly. And if you can get that singular cell operating properly, then by effect, you're affecting the whole, organ and systems. That's why I love cellular health and studying
yeah,
everything cellular. And I wasn't aware of that NLP RP3 inflammasome, which I know is a major one.
yeah.
So that's really interesting. And I wonder. What was I going to say? So that for antioxidants, so it upregulates your own endogenous antioxidant systems. Is that through like the NRF2 pathway or um, another pathway? Is it sort of affecting things like
It
glutathione?
does. It does. And it also doesn't produce reactive oxygen species. They're actually scavengers of free radicals. Ketones are scavengers of free radicals themselves, and
Wow.
they do not produce free radicals when you actually metabolize them. So it's very, very clean
So you're not
burning
got the exhaust fumes,
superfuel.
people. That's basically what you're saying. So when you're
Yeah,
burning glucose, you're making a lot of free radicals, oxidative stress in the cell, just like when your combustion engine is burning fuel, and it's got an exhaust. And the less tuned the engine is, the more exhaust fumes you've got, so to speak. Sort of similar, or the analogy of rust when where you cut an apple open and it goes brown. That's oxidative stress, right? So
right.
these ketones are actually scavenging those free radicals, which of course is a major problem. We want a little bit of oxidative stress, through exercise and things like that, but we don't want to overwhelm our systems. Can you
Because that leads to more inflammation
yeah, exactly. And then
and
your
cellular
ability to,
damage.
yeah, and then, too much hydrogen peroxide and not being able to break it down and all of that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Can you just explain to me before we wrap up, like ketone salts versus ketone esters, which is kinetic and what's the 1,3-butane diol part of it? Just from a
Sure.
chemistry perspective, what's all that about?
Yeah. Kinetic is neither a salt or an ester. It's completely different. So a ketone salt is a ketone molecule, BHB, bonded to a salt, sodium or potassium or calcium. Um, a ketone ester is, as I mentioned earlier, uh, 1,3-butanediol bonded to a BHB molecule.
Mm-hmm.
That both of those, when you ingest them, hydrolyze and break into their individual constituents, and you metabolize them as BHB 1,3-BD salt
Mm-hmm.
once they hit your stomach. Kinetic is a a blend of BHB and 1,3-butanediol without the ester bond. So it's just those two molecules individually
Uh-huh.
um, uh, blended into the drink. And so really it's the end product of the ester after the ester hits your stomach. It's just presented as two separate molecules as opposed to a single molecule bonded together.
And what advantage does that bring over, say, taking a MCT oil or a beta hydroxybutyrate powder? What from a consumer's simplified perspective, why would this be better?
It's better because it tastes a lot better.
That's true.
Um, there are, and that's how we get a product that works well and tastes good.
Mm.
There are no GI issues associated with it, like you get with the ketone salts with the kind of enormous salt load
Yeah.
or the MCT oils. And it is much less expensive to produce than the esters, which use a very expensive manufacturing process involving an enzyme that costs a lot of money. And so, um, yeah,
Huge benefits all around then, and you're not
cost,
getting. Yeah.
efficacy, flavor, yeah, it's superior in all those dimensions.
Wow. Yeah, because I was struggling sort of trying to get my head around the difference there. So, if you're not a chemist, um, that explains it in a nutshell. Well, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground today, Devon. I think we need to probably have a follow up in 6 months' time to see if there's any more research and what else you've found. But
Yeah.
for now, I think it's like everybody get on Kinetic if you can possibly afford it. Like, why there is no reason not to be. As long as you can afford it, because they do cost. But from a therapeutic point of view, well, you're not allowed to say therapeutic claims, so let's be careful. But go and do your research, go and actually look up some of the studies, and make a picture for yourself, educate yourself on why this is something to be thinking about, not just protein, not just fats, and not just carbohydrates, but also thinking about ketones and what benefits. I'm a huge fan, have been for many years, of the various types. Very glad to have found Kinetic because it is the best that I've found so far, especially from the taste and from the efficacy and the dosages that I can get in at a price that isn't going to completely bankrupt me, which with esters were. um, and I can give my mum, therefore, higher doses of that, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm really stoked to have this and to educate people on it. So thank you, Devon, for making this
Lisa, you're amazing.
amazing. It's been a real pleasure catching up with you today, and thanks to the team at the Boulder Longevity Institute for connecting us. You guys rock, and yeah.
Indeed.
People can grab this in my shop, obviously, but where can they find you and your work and the company and all of that? Any more research that you might want to point people to or anything?
Yeah, well, you can find us at drinkkinetic.com.
Mm-hmm.
Um, check out our website there. If you want to order it there, you can do that. You could also go to Amazon. Um, find us at bkinetic on Instagram if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and find resources and access to other information there as well.
Yeah, in education. Well, thank you, Devon, today. It's been absolutely marvelous to learn so much from you.
Thank you, Lisa. Really appreciate it.